So this is the reading of Mark chapter 1, verses 21 through 28. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. Just then there was there in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you done? What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you very much. Okay. I want to begin by thanking those of you who sent me kind words during the week after reading the United Methodist News Service article that came out last Monday. Suki has actually posted it on the church website, and you can access it at the bottom of the homepage through the moving gallery of events there. In that article, I was quoted as saying that COVID-19 has brought the future to our doorsteps, compelling churches to make necessary changes that we've been talking about for decades, but now have to do it, and now have to. A year ago, last March, the use of technology in worship for many churches was a luxury. Now it's a necessity. Another way Centenary is moving into the future is demonstrated by Brian Kurushima. This week, he sent out the year-end financial statements electronically to those for whom he had email addresses. For all the others, we'll just put a stamp on them and send them out the old-fashioned way. Again, we are continuing to adapt as we are forced to lean into new ways of being the church here in the 21st century. At the same time, it can also be said that COVID has moved us backwards. This pandemic has taken us back in one way to the first century. And what I mean by that is first century Christians didn't have church buildings. They did everything in houses, house worship, house meetings, fellowship groups. Here we are, 21 centuries later, finding ourselves in the same situation as we Zoom into Sunday worship from the comfort of our homes. Our houses have become, in effect, holy places, places of worship, at least on Sunday mornings. This week's gospel lesson finds Jesus in a holy place. In fact, the most holiest of places, the synagogue. Jesus shows up to teach, and he shows up in a surprising way as a teacher with a difference. During Jesus' time, the scribes, the learned ones, gathered their teaching skills through scholarship, knowledge, and studying. Mark, however, the gospel writer, presents Jesus as one who teaches with independent authority of God and the backing of his deeds. Jesus demonstrated a divine authority that had not been seen before, and because of that, he was perceived as a threat to the scribes and the other religious types. There in the temple, he encounters a man with an illness of some sort. We are not told what ailed him, and similar to most stories in the gospel involving someone who is outcast, we are not told his name. We are told that he is impure. In biblical terms, impurity means contrary to all that is sacred, all that is contrary to the sanctity of God is considered impure. Jesus' teaching that day in the synagogue liberates this man. We are told that Jesus taught with authority. The Greek word used here is exousia, meaning a religious authority as opposed to a legal one. Thus, this man is healed not through physical acts, such as a vaccine, but through the healing words and spirit of Jesus. As we have seen so many times throughout the Gospels and will see in the coming weeks, it is the power of the spoken word Jesus uses to bring sick people into healing, to raise people from imminent death to life. In the same way that God created the world, not through physical acts, but through God's spoken word. Jesus also brings about healing and well being through words, healing words that he speaks. Jesus' treatment of the ill was amazing. His actions disrupted social norms. We are told that people there in the temple questioned who Jesus was and even questioned his authorities. The social, political, and religious authorities of his day came to view him as a blasphemer and a revolutionary. The exorcism, if I can use that term, that is displayed here in this story really seems to be of secondary importance. Jesus has the divine authority to drive out the unclean spirit living in this person who he encountered in the synagogue that day. And this healing amazed the people who saw what happened, but they were more amazed by the authority with which Jesus acted. There's a powerful connection, I believe, between this story and our current situation. While we are on the road to getting out of this pandemic with the manufacturing of the different vaccines, one thing I have realized and experienced myself these last 11 months is the power of words to bring hope and healing to a situation that seems to be guided purely by physical realities. Surely, the physical reality of COVID is the immediate threat and danger. But throughout these past 10, 11 months, as I have gone around the district through Zoom, naturally, I've heard powerful stories of other churches and church members, stories lifting up those who were feeling down, stories of churches with feeding programs, distributing food throughout the community. One of our churches in Anaheim that has a feeding program has developed a relationship with many now furloughed and laid off workers from Disneyland. Those Disneyland workers have been coming to that church for weekly rations of food. And in the course of the physical exchange of the groceries, those church members have developed deep personal relationships through these Disney workers, uh, relationships formed by conversations which uh, enabled people to open themselves up to total strangers, revealing the harsh realities that they are forced to go through. And because of this, that church has become even more sensitized to the plight of all who have been so harshly impacted during this pandemic. There at that church, at that holy place, throughout the midst of this pandemic, new relationships have been formed. Hope has been instilled in people who thought they had nowhere to go to find something basic as food. Like Jesus in the synagogue that day, who spoke words of healing to a man with an illness, and whose words healed that man. God calls us to speak healing words at this moment to those around us who are searching for hope, who are trying to find meaning in a seemingly meaningless situation. Wherever you find yourselves, consider it a holy place, whether it is in a formal environment such as the church, whether in your own home, or whether walking down the street trying to avoid the homeless folks sleeping in your way. Remember this story that on that day, Jesus spoke words of healing to bring a sick man back to good health. As we continue to move through this pandemic, uh, remember it is not just the physical cure of a vaccine that will ultimately be our salvation. It will be words of hope that God enables us to give to others that will be the source of true healing and wholeness for all. Thanks be to God. Amen.